Welcome back. Hi, everyone. Could you grab a seat? I think we're ready to get started. Welcome back. Well, welcome back. We'll get started as soon as everybody can grab a seat, so find your way to a seat, please. Don't make me use my teacher voice, please. We don't have a lot of time, so I think I'm going to go ahead and get started as people find their way to their seats. I'm Kim Smith. I'm a Henry Crown Fellow of the 6 Degrees class. A bunch of 6 degrees around. Thank you. I have the privilege of leading the Pahara Institute, where I get to work with our Pahara Fellows, Next Gen Fellows, and Teacher Leader Fellows, so they are certainly in the house. Okay. And I'm delighted tonight to just be a sort of MC traffic cop to get to introduce you to 4 amazing AGLN leaders who are going to share their action pledge and then also a little more depth on what they're actually doing to work in education leading towards justice. One, you're going to hear some themes in this. One you're going to hear is that access and academic skills remain important. They're necessary, but not sufficient. So you're going to hear from folks in very different environments how they're tackling striving towards justice through education. I am going to introduce them very, very briefly, ask them to begin with their action pledge, and then we're going to dive a little deeper underneath those pledges to hear some more from them. So if you do that. This mic, oh yeah, nice job, everybody. Okay,
Thank you.
We're going to start with Manoj Kumar.
I'm Manoj from the India Leadership Initiative. Thank you.
Okay.
A couple of years ago, I had this action pledge that my foundation will work towards the education of 100,000 girls. Happy to report that it has been achieved. And this action pledge is taking a deeper dive to take from the number 100,000 to 1 million girls by 2020, and to ensure it's not just putting them in school, it's not just ensuring they will learn, it is to take them till the stage they earn a livelihood right up to the age of 22 and above.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is John. I am an inaugural member of the first class of Pahara Educational Entrepreneurs Fellowship. And my pledge is that I pledge to help cut recidivism in the juvenile justice system in California by 50% by the year 2020.
Thank you. Go ahead.
We don't.
Sure.
No, okay.
Go ahead.
No, my name's Scott Bush. I'm part of the 9th Symphony, the 9th class of the Henry Crown. And my action pledge is actually twofold. One of them was to develop, over the next 7 years, 250 young leaders who are willing to step in and take responsibility for leading our city going forward. The second piece that happens to develop with Walter here is to take that idea and scale it to whatever city next that we want to focus on. Metrics TBD. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Shadia Al-Mayoushi. I'm a Henry Crown Fellow and the co-founder of the Middle East Leadership Initiative. So actually, my action pledge is a collaborative action pledge. It's the pledge of 4 AGLN fellows. So one Henry Crown Fellow, Ami Dror, 1 China Leadership Initiative Fellow, Jane Sun, 1 Middle East Leadership Initiative Fellow for San Hussein, and myself. And our pledge is that we hope to teach at least 1 million children in the world to become self-learners by 2020. That's children who aren't currently receiving an education fit for the world of tomorrow, that fully prepares them for tomorrow's world, or children that are not receiving any education at all. And the way we plan to do this is Leap Learners is an online education entertainment platform that will teach children self-learning skills through missions that they will have to complete. And the main skill set that we're hoping to develop is coding and programming, problem solving, debating, enlightened leadership, global citizenship, and morality and ethics.
Thank you. So education and justice clearly are these massive concepts, and I'm hoping you guys could each help us kind of get our hands around how do we each think about taking action and not being overwhelmed by sort of the enormity of that challenge. And so I thought maybe we could start, now that folks know what your action pledge is, could each of you share a little bit behind what inspired you to take action, what you're actually doing, and help make that connection for us for how you're seeing the actual, what you're doing translating into increasing justice through education. Want to start?
So I'll start by saying that in India, we have a situation where education for all in the point of view of access is legitimately a law enacted and it's existing. But the real challenge is when I started working with the foundation a decade and a half ago, we found that learning levels were very low, abysmally low in pockets, rural pockets, and even in urban slums in the government schools. So the early work was about putting them through private tuitions after school hours, working with teachers and enhancing learning levels. This went on for a few years and with great outcomes till the penny dropped when we went into further remote pockets of India, places where we found out that it was absolutely, even in late 1990, it was very clear that communities believed and practiced the fact that not a single girl will go to school in their village. Mm-hmm. And the only reason they won't go is because they're girls. And this realization led us to change the entire program from working with schools and education and access and learning levels to working only with girls' education. And that transformation meant positively going to such pockets, talking to communities for a year, sometimes 2, sometimes 3, to convince that they will allow us to do the only girls' education program, and getting all the girls without any discrimination thereafter to put them through schooling and take them through the entire schooling process. So we ended up identifying what could be like a gender atlas of India and identifying these pockets where these conditions are extremely adverse, because otherwise we have this facade of this country doing very well and continues to do well, but some of these pockets, which I believe is an extreme injustice happening, continuing to exist. So after we did that for 10 years and then ramped up in the last 2 years to take them to 125,000 numbers of girls to be looked after on a daily basis, contacting every single girl, many of these girls who had completed grade 10 told us the real support we need is not actually in schooling, because the situation in India is changing dramatically in favor of working with children in schools, including girls in general now. The real challenge for us is when we reach the adolescent age of 14, 15. That's when we don't have enough adequate skills, which the schooling system doesn't provide, we are immediately married off. So this led to the direct problem that we were anyway working on malnutrition, which meant we have girls who become mothers at the age of 14, 15, and then it becomes a vicious cycle. And the program had to be forcefully extended on their guidance, that is girls' guidance, to look at taking them through till the age of 18 and 19. And the biggest lesson most of the girls told when we asked them across the country, in these pockets in particular, when we asked them to list one dream they had, if we had to do only one thing, almost unanimously in different languages and dialects, they told us, the only dream we have is to not get married before the age of 25. And it was basically a metaphor for saying, we want to get married only after we are economically independent. And that is something that we're trying to do. And correcting that, I believe, is the best way to change the injustice against 50% of the world.
Thank you. John, share with us what inspired you and what are you doing?
So for the past 32 years, I've had the privilege of being in public education and teaching and principal and superintendent of a number of cities, and I think made contributions, some of them significant, around the issue of youth rights, access, an equity agenda, and in some cases where I had the opportunity to change policies and laws, and I think we did very good and important issues in difficult circumstances. And learned a great deal from that. And one of the most unpleasant learnings has been this absolute realization from day one that there is a complete group of youth who never are allowed to fully participate. And their chances of success are abysmally low. And those are youth in our criminal justice system, in any form of that system, incarcerated, post-incarcerated, working through diversionary, et cetera. I don't think I need to give the statistics that successful completion of high school and post-secondary is absolute ticket to participation in the middle class, reasonably earning a living wage, and the opportunities to contribute in the democracy. Those chances are near zero for the youth in the most broken system that I can think of. And so after a period of pretty significant reflection, I have decided to start an organization where I will begin the work of that organization in October, called New Day, New Year. And fundamentally, we're going to launch a series of alternative juvenile prisons and that will begin in Los Angeles and Oakland and Oklahoma City and in New York City as a proof point to really dealing with this unbelievably thorny issue. Now, I actually believe very strongly that the system is absolutely broken. I mean, I think it's our current legalized form of slavery in this country is incarceration and everything that occurs with that. And while we've spent a lot of thinking in this country about the school to prison pipeline, the prison pipeline of youth to prison pipeline of adult has no juncture for disruption. And the part of this work is that when youth can be newly sentenced or resentenced into New Day, New Year, and will complete their term of incarceration with us, a huge part of the theory of correction will be redemptive theory. Most of our national corrections do not do redemptive theory. You can't actually be redeemed unless you can participate. Youth will leave us and commence and graduate with us a substance and drug-free, resilient, on track for graduation given their age, high school graduation or enrolled in community college, and fully employed, and then spend a period of time in transitional community housing. We just simply won't allow them to try to re-enter public schooling on their own without advocacy about that work so that we can disrupt that piece. That's going to be the work of the next 8 to 10 years. And we chose those cities pretty deliberately around the density of incarceration of particular groups of youth in this country. Our black youth, our brown youth, our white rural youth in the country. And I think that what strikes me is if you spend a moment with any youth in correctional facilities, they just desperately want a chance. And so much of the organization currently conspires to give them none. So that's what we're going to be about.
Great, thank you. Scott?
So in 2014, in August, hot summer day, Michael Brown was shot in St. Louis, which led to a big conversation about what the city was willing to do, what the leaders of St. Louis were willing to do to change St. Louis, to make it a better place. We knew that we had huge race issues. We had all sorts of social problems. But we didn't have a leadership that really even understood how to start a reasonable conversation. We didn't have a leadership across the whole city that knew how to really drive transformation. And in November of that same year, Walter came into town and started a conversation around race and spent some time working his way around the city. We had a lunch that closing day, and around the table were sitting all of these leaders from the nonprofit space and the for-profit space, and Walter classically was drilling everybody about their organizations and what they're willing to do. And what I was sitting back in the corner and I was watching the table, and what was very clear to me was these were very good, smart, impressive people. But in their eyes, you could see a disinterest in aggressively collaborating. Certainly an interest in preserving the status quo. And they were all defending some fortress. They were all defending some turf. And it was at that table where I sat back and said, wouldn't it be cool 10 years from now if the leaders that were sitting around the table were like the leaders that are out here? Were leaders that were inspired and principle-based. They knew how to work across a community. They knew how to understand how to work with each other. They were of one. Wouldn't that be cool? And that started a conversation amongst a bunch of us, and certainly a commitment on my part to build this fellowship that Walter talked about earlier today. Now, Walter also had a series of questions which were very reasonable, which were like, is that really ambitious enough? St. Louis is a great place, but what about New Orleans? What about Detroit? What about Newark? What about Baltimore? And all of those questions were fantastic questions because it wasn't just about one city. It was about an urban core that viscerally needed a new generation of leadership. And we really needed to start at a very early age when those young leaders, those inspiring leaders, could discover that they could, in their own town, make a difference. And that was one huge issue that all these cities have been dealing with, is can we get these leaders to stay? Can we get them to go away to college, come back? And so, we focused in on developing this fellowship that's focusing in on kids between the ages of 16 and 20. And last year, sitting out under that tent, Raj Vinakata, who's part of the Bahara Fellowship, by the way, and I sat down and really built the blueprint of what St. Louis would need to look like, and then focused on what next cities that we could accomplish over the next year. So we've committed to building out St. Louis. Collectively, we've committed to building out Newark, and the next city is TBD. And last but not least, our intention here is really to focus in on taking what we've done with all these other fellowships, right-sizing it for this smaller community, this younger community, and making sure that we sand it and chisel it appropriately so that as we take it to scale, nationally, globally, that it is built to do so effectively.
Great. Thank you, Scott. Shadia, what motivated you? What inspired you? And tell us a little bit more about what you're doing.
So two main things I think inspired me. First, when I looked at my children and what they were learning in school, and when I also look at children as a whole, what they learn in school, it doesn't guarantee you a successful future. What you're learning in school today doesn't give you enough self-learning skills. It doesn't give you enough critical thinking skills. It doesn't give you enough problem-solving skills. And I constantly wonder, what are they going to do when 5 million jobs in the world, in the world's leading economies, could disappear over the next 5 years because of the advances in technology? That's 66% of the world's jobs that are in medium to high risk of disappearing because of technology. So today, students are going to continuously need to reinvent themselves. And this means they might need to change jobs 20 to 30 times in a lifetime in the future. So that's one thing that I was always struggling with. What can I do to make my children and all the other children's chances of success in the world of tomorrow a little bit brighter? And then the other thing I was always struggling with is the refugee crisis. And it's a global crisis, and it's a global problem. But even if I just look at Lebanon specifically, just to give you some perspective on it. So Lebanon's population is 4 million, and 2.2 million refugees between the Palestinian and the Syrian refugees are in Lebanon, which is like absolutely huge for a country like ours. And if you think about how many child refugees there are, it's close to 1 million. So we're talking, if I'm walking in the streets of Lebanon, 1 out of 6 children are child refugees. And of those, 1 out of 20 go to school and receive an education. So this is something that was extremely, extremely disturbing for me. And I always thought, what can I do to sort of make a difference in that? It's like a lost generation. If we lose that generation, these are people that will actually end up being targets for extremists, for violence, for terrorism. And there is another option. So while it looked pretty bleak, I still feel that self-learning can help save these kids and many children in the world. And so that I was sitting in a globalization forum, in a globalization seminar in Jordan, and that drove me to express those concerns to Ami Dror, who's my dear friend sitting there and who's a co-founder of this platform. And I was telling him, I can't just be a managing partner of a law firm. As much as I'm feeling successful in that and I'm doing a great job, I feel I need to do something about education in the world and online education. And this discussion drove us to build this platform. And this discussion actually also drove Jane Sun, who was also attending the seminar, to sit with us and to say, look, I really want to do this with you guys. She just dropped into our discussion and said, this is amazing, I'm on board. And that's how Leap Learner was born. So how we wish to achieve this is basically, we want to achieve more justice through education. And the way we feel that we can do it is to enable anyone with a screen and internet connection to develop these self-learning skills and to provide an access to online education and enable really all these students to become global citizens through self-learning and the skills we will provide on the platform. And we want to enable all the students to have access, whether they're rich or poor. And the way we hope to do that is to say, look, for every subscription that people actually pay for on this platform, we will give 1 subscription away for free in refugee camps, in underprivileged villages, and it will be a 1-for-1. And we will make sure that we're actually providing an education, an equal education, accessible to all children wherever you're coming from and whatever circumstances you've been faced with. And the way we also we hope to achieve this is to work with the international NGOs for access to some refugee camps or to some areas where it's not so easy to get the access because they will need hardware, they will need the internet connections, and they will need other things that we're doing. So what I want to say is that Leap Learner was actually born out of the AGLN. I consider Leap Learner an AGLN initiative and an AGLN project. And without the AGLN, it would never come to fruition this way. We wouldn't be where we are. And so what I love about it is the founders are actually from Lebanon, Israel, Palestine, and China. And I think if this is not an example... So we hope to show that, even in the core of how Leap Learner was born, it was born out of the collaboration of something that seemed pretty impossible, close to impossible. And we hope to that collaboration of true global citizenships, what they can do and what they can create, will really affect the world. And I really hope that we can make it, even expand it to be an even larger AGLN project, because as I look at everyone here in the room, I mean, we've got so much value we can learn. We just went through an action workshop where we had 25 fellows around the table. There's so much for us to learn, and this project can really, and this venture can really become a venture for every single person in this room. And we really hope we value the feedback we're going to get, the advice we're going to get, the support we might get, the funding we might get, anything we might get from everybody in this room. And finally, like, my desired outcome for this is really, I feel excited. I'm working with the most amazing people. I feel so alive, I feel so committed, and I feel so much passion, and I haven't felt so much passion in a really long time. So that's another desired outcome.
Thank you. So we don't have a lot of time, but I wanted to ask you guys 2 questions, given just the incredible group of leaders we have here in the room. The first one is, going back to Brian Stevenson's comments towards the end, he was talking about remaining hopeful. So I think, Shadia, you had a great segue into that with your last comment there, but can you just say a little bit, each of you has taken on something enormous, and clearly with a great deal of hope, but also being realistic about what's happening in the world. So could you just say a little bit about what it is that keeps you hopeful, any things you're seeing that are giving you hope in the work that you're doing in these projects? And then I'll pre-prepare you. My next question is going to be, given who's here and the incredible leadership, talent, and power in this room, what would be a challenge or a request of all the folks in the room? So that would be my second one. So what keeps you hopeful? How do you stay hopeful? Sure, great.
So there are two types of people I reach out to. One is those who think with the heart, and the other is those who think with the brain. And both are needed. For the ones who think with the brain, I plead with them the economics that the best return on investment in the world is when you invest in girls. And it's proven beyond. And when I say this with a certain rational way, what really we have seen is when we work with boys in India and also work with girls, and when we speak to the cohort, the alumni, and ask them, what would you do in return, or what would you do, or why would you want more boys or more girls to teach? They have told, both of them, communities in different parts, have said this more or less uniform message, and I'll sort of transliterate it to say that the boys often said, this will help me to achieve something and be someone and create a good family and take this forward. Most of the girls had an answer saying that I would be able to ensure that my grandchildren will never have to go through this. The approach of thinking 3 generations ahead has been the most humbling learning girls have taught us. And their ability to think for generations ahead, to think for communities, rather than just this male-centric approach of looking at only ourselves. And that difference makes it such a hope that investing in these girls, investing in their education, taking them to a different stage in life is the game changer. They will ensure that there is no injustice hereafter.
Thank you. So, John, you went from what many people think is one of the most messed up systems in the US to one that people think is even more messed up. Like, how, like, what happened, and how do you stay hopeful, and why are you hopeful? Because you clearly are. You can see a path.
It's a struggle, to be quite honest, to be hopeful at the moment, but I am. And I was thinking a lot, our amazing speaker talks about proximity. I think a lot about that. There's a famous story of the most award-winning photographer of World War II who would take the pictures of the most indelible pictures we have in our mind of battle in World War II. And they said, like, how do you know when you have a bad picture? And he was very clear, when you're not close enough to the action. And so my hope is that you can't possibly remain untouched if you visit a youth in prison. It's just not possible. And that I hope that people can take the ability to allow themselves to say that there's just not someone I don't know locked over there, because that someone you will need eventually to take care of you when you are old. That's someone you will need eventually to drill your tooth, to change the tires on the plane when you want to go visit your grandkid when you get older. The ability to contribute into the economy is beyond necessary. And quite frankly, I'm hopeful that people in their soul believe in power. I personally happen to practice the Catholic faith, and there's one of the central tenets, and you visit the imprisoned. I think it's a civic issue as well as a personal religious issue, but I do know that it is impossible to walk away and not be touched and moved and hopeful that if given a chance, they too can be you.
They just need a path. Thank you. Scott, how about you?
So I sat around the dinner table with my children, and they're about the same age of the kids we're talking about putting into this program, and they increasingly amaze me, and their friends amaze me with the passion that they have to change their society, and their ability of networking and plugging in with each other. And so as I think of this as getting these different fellowships together in New Orleans, meeting St. Louis, meeting, you guys, and meeting and talking about these same problems and being able to help each other collaborate, it is mind-bendingly exciting. And that's what keeps me hopeful.
Great, thank you. How about you, Shadia?
So I would say, I think the vulnerability and fragility of human beings, that keeps me very hopeful, because when you are vulnerable and when you are fragile, you can be in touch with so much and be so aware of everything that's going on around you and going on in the world around you. And the other thing is that I'm 100% convinced that in any situation of the utmost darkness, you can find some light. And in every single person, there is light. And this keeps me very hopeful always. Yeah.
So you have this incredible group of leaders in front of you from all around the world. If you got to make a request of them or challenge them, what would you say?
I'm going to be provocative and say, try to consciously practice positive discrimination of girls in every single deed, thought, and word, and it works magic. Try doing it. It's easier said than done.
Thank you.
I'm going to ask that you conspire with all of your friends, colleagues, all of your contacts to see if we could change just one single law, at least in every state in the United States. There's a lot to criminal justice reform, but this is an unbelievable piece. People have this myth that you serve your time and that, like, you've paid your dues. You pay your dues forever. It's a constant punishment. If the law could be changed so that upon release from juvenile corrections, a juvenile record is not sealed but expunged, removed forever, that would have an enormous effect on the ability to participate again.
Thank you.
Bring us our next cities. You know, we'll build the toolbox. We'll build the ability of networking these youth leadership groups together. Reach out into your communities. We'll tell you how much you need to raise. We'll tell you how to do it. We will support you in every way possible, but bring us through this great network, bring us our next cities.
Shadia?
So if you asked me a year ago whether I would ever imagine that I would be in a venture that's in education and technology, I would have told you probability is 0 and absolutely no way. I mean, I'm so far out of my comfort zone. So what I would say is, where you have any fear, any sense of fear, fear is your friend. Go towards it, because behind that fear is definitely probably something that will be extremely soothing and rewarding to you, and that will probably have a huge impact around you. So I would say, you know, in moderator training, they tell us always silence is your friend. I would say fear is your friend, and don't run away from it. I've run away from it all my life, and it's the first time I actually go towards something that I'm very fearful about. And so I would say that fear is your friend, and I would say connect with your own light and connect with the light of the amazing people that are around you, because I think that's extremely powerful.
Thank you. So the only thing I would say in wrapping is, you all know this already, but these are 4 incredible examples, and we know there are so many more in the room. So I want to thank, again, these 4 folks for showing us what can be done and how to take action, and to really encourage all of you to figure out the way to plug in to both what they're doing and those around you and take action, as everyone has said. So thank you so much for having us, and thank you all.